There's a lot of projections that happen due to pain and anger and broken down promises or fantasies that were created even unbeknownst to the other partner in a relationship. And I think this is where you help by really bringing years of experience and tactics into the table, and allowing them to kind of become more aware of their communicative style, right?
Yes. The reality is, like in a divorce situation in particular, these are two people that at one point in their lives thought the other person was the greatest person in the world, and they wanted to spend their entire life with him. They've gone from that place to a place where they cannot see themselves spending any more time with that person. Not that they can't be in their presence, but they've made a decision to go through this hellacious thing we call divorce. And they only do that after many, many layers of scars and pain and misunderstanding and mistrust. So there's, couples don't get there easily. It takes, a divorce doesn't happen quickly. It happens in layers, shall we say. And so some of what we're trying to do in mediation, we certainly can't take off all those layers, but if we can take off a few of them to help and sort of reach under and grab that caring that they actually still have for each other. It's just that they're not in touch with it very often because they're so much in touch with their anger about the things that set them off.
Exactly, and this is where mediating service, like the Common Ground mediation services that you help establish and run, is the healing, the shamanic way, the shamanic journey into bringing two people to break down projections, to break down to the core of the issue, and really work it out, no matter what the outcome is, but help communicate. And we were talking earlier about how listening is not really something that we learn in pre-K or first grade or 8th grade or high school, college even, unless later on in life we select for seminars, right, for listening seminars. Talk a little bit about that. Why don't we have listening classes so we could hear each other better?
If there's anything I would like to see changed in the education system in this country, is to incorporate listening as a skill that's taught to children as they're raised. In the education that I had, in hundreds, maybe thousands of hours of classroom time and assignments that had to do with communication skills, it was virtually all about how to write or how to speak. It was all outgoing. I never had 1 hour of training on how to listen in grade school, junior high, high school, and college. Now, later when I went to some seminars, as you have mentioned, I did in fact start to get some skills in listening, and I've done a lot more since then, and finding that it takes quite a while to really learn it. There is not a magic formula to learn how to listen well to people, because we have, as a culture in this country, I believe, developed so many patterns of people talking at each other and competing with each other. Listening isn't something that we have historically valued a great deal. Now, I think that's changing in our society, which I'm really pleased, and I hope we'll see it change in the context of teaching listening skills to children in our educational system.
Right. Right, like when parents scream at a child.
Yes. Yeah, it's like, listen to me! What kind of model are they showing to the child, when they say that? To them, they're almost, in that situation, a parent might be sort of implying listening means to shut up and do what I tell you, as opposed to having any kind of a true conversation.
I think a lot of people think that if they raise their voice, they will be heard. Maybe because they felt like they have not been heard before enough, or they have not communicated well enough for them to be heard, and they do raise their voice. And I know I'm guilty of it. I think maybe all of us have been guilty of it, but maybe I'm generalizing. But that is one of the issues I've noticed in relationships. that people do yell and scream over each other. That's a very good point.
I'm amazed at how often people, as you say, expect to get heard by raising your voice, and it reminds me of one of the definitions of insanity, to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different outcome. It's kind of like another form of insanity is saying the same thing over again, louder and louder, and expecting someone to therefore hear it, as opposed to either express it a different way, or maybe first, before speaking, ask the other person what's their point of view, and then maybe the other person would be more willing to hear.
Right, right. And there comes about the healing and
Yes.
and the change. And with that whole slogan of being the change you want to see, it's very hard to be that change and listen when a person feels like they're not being listened to. And that's another stand maybe to think about, is being the change you want to see with your partners. I want to feel heard, excuse me. So maybe I should start listening. And a lot of people listen by being defensive. And again, a lot of people don't listen for the right reasons. They have a comeback right away. They shut things down. They have a fight ready. They have a war. Person is not finished speaking, and they're all geared up for it. I just have another question. How important is a divorce mediator's professional background when choosing a mediator? There's a couple facing a divorce court. How important should your background be to someone?
I think the background is not as important as the skills per se, because the reality is divorce mediators come from a wide variety of backgrounds. There's a sizable chunk that come from the legal profession. There's another sizable chunk that come from the therapist portion, and then there's the third group, which I happen to fall in, that come to sort of from everything else. For me, I had 20 years of human resources experience, a lot of it in employee relations, organization development, so I had a lot of those kind of skills. And then I sold residential real estate for 8 years before I got into mediation, negotiation skills.
Very rich background.
So it's more, what is the person's interest? And then there are some very specific skills to get in seminars. There are organizations that put on 40-hour courses, which are just sort of the very basics about divorce mediation. And then there's other courses around that teach, shall we say, the finer points of some of the various forms of mediation. But I wouldn't put as much emphasis on the background of the person. It's just like attorneys, I think, are often accused of focusing excessively on the entitlements and obligations in the mediation process, and therefore sometimes using a more evaluative approach. But that's not true of all attorney mediators. In fact, my mediation partner is what I refer to as a recovering attorney. She's retired as an attorney, but she was a prosecutor at one point. And she very much uses the transformative model of listening, to people. With the same token, I've seen therapists who one would expect to have a more facilitative and transformative style, who can also be, very directive in the mediation process. So just because someone has a particular background per se doesn't, in my mind, indicate if they're going to be the kind of mediator that a couple wants. It's more, I would encourage somebody to ask questions of what kind of mediations have they done, and what is their approach, and how do they handle different kind of situations. Not every couple wants the same kind of mediation. Some couples want somebody to be highly directive. So that's, again, listening to the clients and finding out what is it that they want.